Every martial artist who stepped into Hollywood heard the same whispered rule. Never compare yourself to Bruce Lee. Never challenge him, never question him, and absolutely never claim you could beat him. Yet one young man would spend his entire life trying to stand in that shadow, reshape it, and outrun it. A man who claimed discipline, mastery, and spiritual depth, while carrying a reputation built on contradictions. And for decades, a single rumor followed him everywhere he went. A rumor so persistent, so defiantly alive, that people treated it like a buried chapter in martial arts history. The alleged day young Steven Seagal knocked on Bruce Lee's door and walked away broken, humbled, and forever changed. Impossible, illogical, contradictory, and yet unkillable. The story shouldn't exist. The timelines don't agree. The witnesses are few. The evidence is absent. But the way the rumor feels, the psychology, the rivalry, the contrast, makes people believe it anyway. Because this isn't really a story about a physical fight. It's a story about ego colliding with greatness. It's about ambition brushing up against genius. It's the perennial narrative of a young man desperately searching for legitimacy, standing before a legend who defined an entire generation's idea of human potential and philosophical combat. It is fundamentally a story of what people desperately want to be true, even when the meticulous records of history refuse to cooperate. The initial versions of the legend are always cinematic. They begin with a car pulling up to a modest home in Culver City, California, around the pivotal year of 1970. A quiet street, the afternoon sun casting long, deceptive shadows over perfectly manicured suburban lawns. But in one specific backyard, the atmosphere is electric. A small circle of loyal students watches in awe as Bruce Lee, lean, intense, almost terrifyingly focused, demonstrates the core principles of Jeet Kune Do. Every kick, every pivot, every snap of the hand is a philosophy in kinetic motion. These weren't movements designed for spectacle or performance. They were meditations in movement. They were physical expressions of a mind that had mastered not just strength, but timing, intent, and the conquest of fear. This was not practice. It was the pursuit of existential freedom through martial art. Then, abruptly, a disruption. A knock. Firm. Unexpected. Disruptive. Bruce, lost deep in the rhythm of his training, doesn't hear it at first. He's too locked into the flow, too focused on the moment. But the visitor is impatient, carrying the demanding impatience of youth combined with unwavering self-certainty. The visitor is a tall, sharp-faced teenager. Steven Seagal, not yet the Hollywood star, not yet refined by the decades of training in Japan, not yet the man who would craft an entire Hollywood persona around calm, invulnerable mastery. His friend stands beside him, nervously shifting weight from one foot to the other, a silent barometer of the extreme tension they have created. When no one answers the front door immediately, Seagal, with striking audacity, doesn't retreat. He circles around to the backyard, stepping directly into Bruce Lee's inner world as if it were a common, public training space. The legend says that for a brief, pregnant moment, the world stopped turning. Bruce glanced up, surprised and undeniably annoyed to see two uninvited strangers interrupting his sacred training sanctuary. His students froze, their reverence instantly replaced by hostility towards the intruder. And Seagal, confident, intense, and utterly unbowed, introduced himself and issued a challenge. This was not a polite request for a friendly spar. This was a direct test, a demand for immediate confrontation. It was the kind of challenge that immediately exposes either extraordinary self-assured courage or a catastrophic, unforgivable misjudgment of one's own capabilities. Bruce allegedly smiled. But it wasn't a malicious or mocking smile. It was the quiet, reflective expression a seasoned master reserves for a young man who fundamentally believes raw strength is the sole determinant of victory. And then, without a ceremonial bow or a spoken word, he stepped forward. His hands dropped and folded calmly behind his back. A gesture simultaneously dismissive, terrifying, and profoundly instructive. It was the silent message that would echo through the decades. I don't need my hands for this lesson. What follows in the unkillable myth is violence delivered with surgical, clinical precision. A blur of movement so impossibly fast that the single rumored witness could barely process the individual strikes. Seagal advancing, Bruce pivoting. A kick, sharp, explosive, and delivered with perfect timing, driving into Seagal's hip. Another kick, and another. Each strike was placed where force collapses structure, where balance dissolves, and where willpower becomes irrelevant against scientific placement. Seagal, the challenger, never closes the distance. He never finds the grip. He never gains leverage. Bruce, the legend, treats the fight like a simple mathematical problem he has already solved millennia ago. A final low side kick buckles Seagal's leg, and the taller man hits the ground hard, breath knocked out of him, his pride visibly leaking into the stunned silence around him. Bruce steps back, his hands still calmly folded behind him, and famously leaves the yard without uttering a single word. That is the myth. That is the compelling story that millions clicked on, argued about, dissected, and endlessly rediscovered year after year. It's visceral. It's undeniably cinematic. It's profoundly symbolic. And yet, it is also most likely impossible. The endurance of the myth relies entirely on the spectacular nature of its central conceit. Because when we peel back the sensational layers of the hands behind the back narrative, everything fractures and the contradictions multiply. In Seagal's later interviews, decades after the event, he speaks fondly of Bruce, calling him kind, approachable, and even joking about their children looking alike. But those details are the first to contradict verifiable reality. Brandon Lee was born in 1965. Seagal did not have his first child until 1975, a full 2 years after Bruce Lee had died. This small, biographical inconsistency is precisely where grand legends begin to collapse under scrutiny. Seagal claims meetings and associations that appear in absolutely no biography, in no personal letter, and in no interviews with Bruce's most loyal, closest circle. And Bruce's circle was meticulously organized. Dan Inosanto, Taiki Kimura, Linda Lee, they documented nearly every spar, every personal anecdote, and every shift in training philosophy. A secret fight that resulted in a humiliating defeat or worse, an injury requiring medical attention? That would be impossible to hide from such a disciplined and loyal group. Seagal's personal timeline fractures even further, making the fight chronologically implausible. Seagal didn't move to Japan until 1971. His intensive Aikido training, which forged his signature style, did not truly begin until after he had relocated and immersed himself in the culture. In 1970, he was not the stoic, wrist-breaking master audiences would later see on film sets. He was, by historical measure, a highly ambitious but relatively unseasoned teenager still searching for identity and direction. Bruce, meanwhile, was strategically oscillating between Hong Kong and Los Angeles, recovering from a debilitating back injury, preparing for the big boss, juggling fatherhood, complex film negotiations, and refining a revolutionary philosophy. The circumstances simply do not align for a young, untested challenger to successfully crash such a guarded, high-stakes life. Could a young Seagal have physically driven to Bruce Lee's home? It's possible. Could he have possessed the confidence or the arrogance to issue such a brazen challenge? Perhaps. Could he have survived a bare-knuckle encounter with a concentrated Jeet Kune Do master long enough for anyone to remember it decades later? Almost certainly not. But the real impossibility is not the action itself, it is the ensuing silence. The total absence of ripple effects. Bruce's inner circle was not the type to forget such a monumental event. And Seagal, a man who has never hesitated to inflate his own legend, would not have avoided confirming a victory or denying a defeat at every single opportunity in the following decades. And yet he didn't. That silence is where the psychology begins. Bruce Lee was not just a great fighter. He was a philosopher in motion. Every kick, punch, and stance was a lesson about ego, discipline, and human limitation. Steven Seagal, on the other hand, spent much of his life navigating the tense, often contradictory intersection of celebrity and martial arts legitimacy. He constantly demanded recognition, yet he operated in a cultural sphere that constantly reminded him that some benchmarks, like Bruce Lee's seamless blend of philosophy and combat, could never be reached. Bruce Lee was not merely a man to surpass. He was a living symbol of the ideal. A constant, unavoidable mirror reflecting what Seagal wanted to be, but could never fully embody without contradiction. And in that profound existential sense, the fight, whether real or completely imagined, became eternal. It transformed into a story about ambition and insecurity, about reverence and simmering rivalry. The legend of the knock on the door, the brutal backyard session, and the silent retreat of a young challenger persists because it is so magnetically, so powerfully psychologically compelling. It encapsulates the human drama of ego confronting genius, of overconfidence meeting mastery, of mythology writing itself indelibly into cultural memory and human desire. Even if we accept that no physical encounter occurred, Seagal's entire career trajectory demonstrates the deep, pervasive influence of Bruce Lee's shadow. Every claim of personal authenticity, every sharp martial arts insult hurled at contemporaries, every attempt to distinguish himself from mere movie stars functions as a lifelong negotiation with an unseen adversary. Bruce Lee, who died years before Seagal achieved any measure of fame, still fundamentally shapes Seagal's narrative. Every film, every carefully crafted anecdote, every interview is an indirect response to the man who, in reality, never needed to defend his reputation because it was already and permanently untouchable. This is why the myth persists with such tenacity, because it isn't really about the logistics of time or place. It's about the universal clash of ambition and excellence, and the strange, enduring way some figures loom over the next generation long after they are gone. Bruce Lee represents a standard that is not merely physical or technical. It is moral, philosophical, and existential. He embodies the idea that greatness cannot be merely performed. It must be authentically lived. And for those who try to follow, like Steven Seagal, every statement, every action, and every carefully curated persona becomes part of a continuous, agonizing, lifelong negotiation with that impossible standard. The psychological drama reveals itself in Seagal's deliberate ambiguity. Why mention a conversation about children when the timelines make it impossible? Why claim friendly association with the inner circle when the record is blank? Because these claims function as an attempt to construct proximity to immortality. By inserting himself even marginally into Bruce Lee's personal orbit, Seagal attempts to elevate his own status, granting himself a piece of the unassailable legitimacy that Lee possessed. The respect is real, but the rivalry is the engine of his fame. This psychological analysis forces a deeper question about memory itself. The human mind rarely records events with documentary precision. Instead, it reconstructs, rationalizes, and often embellishes. A single eyewitness account decades after the fact, filtered through nostalgia, personal desire, or selective recollection, becomes the robust foundation for an entire legend. Audiences, hungry for spectacle and clean narrative arcs, convert conjecture into historical authority. A powerful myth is thus born. Yet the ultimate value of the myth lies not in its factual accuracy, but in its symbolic power. The story crystallizes profound lessons on ego, ambition, and the harsh consequences of overconfidence. It dramatizes the danger of challenging mastery prematurely, of seeking validation through loud confrontation rather than quiet, dedicated self-cultivation. Bruce Lee's calm, silent authority contrasts sharply with Seagal's externalized assertion of skill. One embodies internal, philosophical mastery. The other embodies the restless pursuit of external recognition. The tension is eternal. The lesson is universal. Even when stripped completely of literal truth, the legend endures because it reflects something primal about the human condition. We are drawn to confrontation with greatness, whether that greatness is real or imagined. We construct elaborate narratives that allow us to vicariously experience the collision of ego and genius, ambition and achievement, youth and legacy. Bruce Lee versus Steven Seagal becomes a powerful metaphor, a psychological landscape in which viewers can safely explore their own aspirations, their own deepest fears, and their own limitations. The conflict is immortal because the ambition is universal. The real fight, then, did not occur in a suburban backyard in Culver City. It happened in the mind, in memory, in ambition, in the vast, contested spaces between myth and reality. And it is infinitely more meaningful for that profound truth. Because in the absence of a verifiable physical confrontation, the psychological battle becomes universal. It is a timeless story about the true cost of ego, the relentless price of legacy, and the eternal struggle of mortals striving to contend with the immortal. And now the question that drives the debate, ignites comment sections, and exposes the fault lines in martial arts culture. If the fight had happened, if Bruce Lee and young Steven Seagal truly stood face-to-face in 1970, do you believe Seagal would have walked away a stronger man, or a broken one? Whatever you decide, one truth remains utterly unshakable. Legends don't die because they're real. They live because people need them to be. They live because human ambition, envy, and aspiration are eternally drawn to greatness, even when that greatness is gone. And the echoes of a single knock on a door, a single silent lesson in a backyard, can shape the psychological framework of generations.